So I just want to start it off by going back to you, age 12. You were sitting in class with the devil and the angel on your shoulder, and let's say there was a researcher who was researching you back then. What would they have predicted about your future?
Well, that's a great question. So, my parents got divorced when I was 12. We kind of grew up in kind of a middle class family. And as they're going through this divorce, we just started the new school year. We ended up moving 13 times in the 7 years through my teenage years. And so we just started this new school year, and I'm sitting there listening to the teacher or watching the teacher. I wasn't even hearing what they were saying. And I was just remember thinking to myself, I liken it to those cartoons when they have like a little devil talking into your ear and a little angel. And the devil was basically like, look, you can do whatever you want with your life now. Like you can like drink alcohol, you can do drugs, you can mess around with girls, you can skip school, like you can do whatever you want. And for the rest of your life, you can blame it on your parents. And there was this little angel on the other, shoulder saying, you can do that, but if you do that, you have to live like it's your life to make, it's your life to break. You have to like live with the consequences of your life. And I fortunately was like, okay, I decided to just, to design and create my life versus just like react to all the stuff that was happening to me. So I think if you're a researcher and you're watching me at that time, I think you would say that I was a kid that had some influence, like that other people listened to, like that I had some like innate in leadership skills. But I also wonder if at that point I would have been voted, one of the more least likely to succeed, just because just my family situation was pretty precarious. Ultimately, my professional background was very precarious. I was making pizzas and doing construction work and worked at a mall kiosk. And so, I'd never had a college education. So those things I think were kind of stacked, as it were, against me. But what I did have and what you can't measure is I had a ton of work ethic, a ton of dreams, a ton of goals, a ton of like just ambition and fire and, willingness to put in the effort. And those are things that you can't measure.
Why do you think you had such big dreams at such a young age?
The dreams kind of grow as you grow, right? So you start to understand more what's possible for you as you get a little bit older, and maybe you start stringing some wins together. Like one of the things I like to tell to youth is, number one, you want to bloom where you're planted and string wins together. So sometimes like we like try and skip to the 10th step when we're on step one.
Yeah.
And you want to bloom where you're planted. And what that means is like become great at what you're doing today. If you like, I remember when I was making pizzas, I literally tried to be one of the best employees they had. I remember when I was uh, doing the construction work, I'd wake up at like 3 or 4 in the morning so that I could get up there and like get a ton of the work done before it got really hot in the afternoon. No one told me I had to do that. I just did it because, I just like was trying to do a good job. I was trying to like go the extra mile. When I sold the animated Bible videos, over time, I became the most successful sales guy they had in their company. And I share that to say you want to bloom where you're planted and then start to string wins together. Like one win can lead to the next win because it's the success principles of resilience and taking action and focus and hard work. All of those success principles that you learn, that formula, you can apply to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I think that's what I did.
Yeah, I love that mindset you have of always doing extra work, always going above and beyond. And I think that's something that served me super well as well. And it's an essential mindset to have if you want to if you want to like start some kind of business.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. You want to, a philosophy I've lived by is always do more than you're paid for as an investment in your future. So the word
Yeah.
always is not occasionally or when it's convenient or when you feel like it. Always is always. And you don't just do what you're paid for. Most people don't even do what they're paid for. In other words, they don't even put in the honest hour. You not only want to do what you're paid for, but you want to do more than you're paid for as an investment in your future. You're investing in the future version of who you're born to be.
Yeah, and I feel like that it just makes you respect yourself so much more.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
something that you said that I really like is that rich people buy assets. So I just want to ask you, like, what's your strategy for buying assets and like making investments into yourself?
Yeah, so, I came from a middle class family. I had really no financial education at all. I was never taught about any of this stuff. And I had a mentor of mine that he's unfortunately since passed, but he became a billionaire. He's a self-made first generation billionaire. And he taught me a very simple 3-step wealth building strategy. It's super simple, but it's also super powerful. And it's one that's changed my whole life. So step 1 is to maximize income. Step 2 is to minimize expense. And then step 3 is to build assets. And so, maximize your income means you want to learn to make as much as possible. Step 1 to wealth building is learn to make more money. Like build new skills, learn to create more value, learn to get great at what you do, become the best at what you do so you're paid more money. And again, even if you're in just like kind of an hourly kind of job right now, and maybe it's not what your ultimate goal is, you still become the best at that. You bloom where you're planted so that you can start parlaying that win into another win, string some wins together. And so you learn to make more money. The second thing is, as you make more, most people, when they're 18, 19, 20, whatever, like they'll come up, their income kind of increases and then it kind of levels off for when they're
Yeah.
30 and 35 and 40 and 45 and 50. Like they might have some small increases over time, maybe with inflation, but really the income level just kind of levels off. What you want to do is you want to maximize your income so your income level goes up, but then minimize your expenses so your expense level goes down. And what most people do is when they make money, they spend money. So in other words, is that if their income were to increase, their expense line would increase right along with it. So if they're making $1, they spend $1. If they're making 3, they spend 3. If they're making 7, they spend 7. And you want to get to a point where your income line's increasing and your expense line is decreasing. So you're actually you're creating a gap between income and expense. And then with the gap, you actually use that to build cash flowing assets. You use the gap. So a simple way to think about it is poor people buy stuff, rich people buy assets. A friend of mine has a hat that says "Get income by," or he says it says "Make money, buy income," and that's a great way to think about it. Like you make money in your job, but then you start buying income with your assets. Your assets create your cash flow, your kind of residual or passive cash flow. And so that's what I would do if I was starting over. That's what I did, by the way, is those 3 steps. I maximized my income, I minimized my expenses, and then I started learning to create cash flowing assets. And those 3 steps changed my whole life.
In case some of the listeners don't know, what would be some examples of like assets that like you can start buying?
Yeah. So Jim Rohn says, buy 1 bike to ride and 1 bike to rent. So like the idea is that you have things that are generating cash for you. So an asset's something that generates cash for you. So think of it this way. If you had a house, which by the way I think is great, if you had a house, the house is not generating cash for you. Now maybe you're picking up some appreciation and so on over time, but the point is you're paying a mortgage, you're paying property taxes, you're paying utilities. It's pulling cash out of your bank versus putting cash in your bank. But if you had a rental property could be putting cash into your bank. So even after you pay your property taxes and pay your utilities and pay your mortgage, you still have money left over that's adding to your bank. It's increasing your bank account. So that's the way you think about it, is you want to be creating assets that are things that are generating cash for you. So whether that's in stocks, most people, they have an iPhone but they don't own any of Apple. You want to own Apple. You want to own some of these stocks. I'm using that as an example. I'm not trying to give like investing advice other than to simply say, using that as an example of the products. Don't just be a consumer, be an owner. Another way to think about it is, I have a kind of a wide range, but from apartments to mobile home parks to our mobile home communities to oil and gas to some business ventures, not startups, but business ventures. So I have kind of a wide range, but there are things that pay me. They pay me either every month, every quarter, or every year. And that's what you want to start building as cash flowing assets.
Yeah, for sure. So something else that you said that was super interesting was that there's no bad ideas. There's only good ideas that lead to good ideas. So what are some of like the ideas that you had in the past that like you thought you were bad that you thought they were bad at the time, but they actually ended up being good and led to good ideas later on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So ideas are a resource, just like gold and silver are a natural resource. Ideas are a natural resource. They're ideas. You could have $1 million ideas or $1 billion ideas. Remember, one of our My last business, I remember as we were creating that business, I remember thinking, I was like, dude, we have $1 billion idea. Like, this is a big, big, big idea. And I spent the next 11 years proving that that was right. And the truth was, I was actually wrong. It wasn't $1 billion idea. It was a $2.5 billion idea. It was an even bigger idea than I thought it was. And so,
Yeah.
when I say there's no bad ideas, think of it this way. The way that I like to build the culture within my teams and within my companies is best idea wins. Best idea wins, meaning I don't care if it's my idea or your idea or her idea or his idea. It doesn't matter. I just want the best idea. And so we all create an environment of collective genius where we all put our best ideas on the table. We all work together. It's okay to press against them. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to not see it the same way. And we all don't get our feelings hurt because we're looking for the best idea. Because sometimes what happens is there's either good ideas, you're like, man, that's a great idea, let's do that. Or there's ideas that are not the good idea, but they lead to the good idea. It's almost like it chums the water. Like when you're fishing, you would chum the water to attract the fish. It's like the
Yeah.
idea, like sometimes I'll be like, hey guys, all right, let's go. Let's just put some ideas out there. Like start whiteboarding, just start idea, because the ideas can lead to ideas. And so the spirit of collective genius is important because the ultimate idea you're getting to, someone may want to take credit for the ultimate idea. But remember, you could never get to the ultimate idea without the original bad idea. Because the bad idea led to an idea that still wasn't right, but is, that's interesting. What if we did this? That's not right either, but that's interesting. What if we did this? What if we just took off that and added this, and all of a sudden it leads to the right idea, but you never would have got there without the original bad idea. So ideas lead to ideas, and you want to work in a spirit of collective genius where best idea wins.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of just like peeling back a layer of an onion.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a way to think about it for sure. Is you're just digging in there to find the best idea.
Yeah. So how could someone who's listening to this start coming up with better ideas?
Well, again, I think you just start with just ideas, right? Like you start pressure testing your ideas, and you start. I think you start so there's. I did a radio or I did a magazine interview once, and after it was on like leadership. So finished the article, and then the guy said to me after, he goes, hey, let me ask you a question. I go, what's that? He goes, how did this happen for you? He goes, how did you go from like broken home and no college education and whatever? He's like, now like billions of sales and multiple companies. Like, what happened? And I thought about it. I was like, man, how did that happen? And it really came down to four things, four kind of keys. Number one is read, listen, surround, apply. So you want to read great books, listen to inspiring information, surround yourself with great people, and then apply what you learn. And so if you're lacking ideas right now, make sure that you're in a great book. Your nose is in a great book. If you're lacking ideas right now, make sure you're listening to inspiring information. You're listening to podcasts or YouTubes, or you're proactive, taking an online course, you're proactively searching out great information. And then number three is surround yourself with great people. You're finding ways to get in proximity with great people. And then lastly is you apply what you learn, because you can read the books, listen to the audios, you can surround yourself with who you want, but at the end of the day, what you got to do is you got to apply what you learn, and applying what you learn is how you get to where you want to go. So that's what I would say is if you're looking for ideas, I would read, listen, surround, and apply.
Yeah, I really like what you said about like surrounding yourself with great people. I think that's like a complete game changer. And you've done really well with that, surrounding yourself with great people like John C. Maxwell, for example, Ed Milet, and so many huge names like that. What what would be some tips you have for the listeners to become better at networking with people? Because that's
Yeah, I mean,
huge. And
yeah. One of the chapters in my book is what I call "Be Unforgettable." So you're mentioning John Maxwell. I went to took my son. He was 17 at the time. My son's name's Isaac, to Costa Rica to be with John Maxwell. So we were part of a small group that was part of a country transformation, and we went there to. There's maybe 8 of us. It's kind of a high level group, and then I brought my
yeah,
son. And the very first night we had dinner with John, and we're sitting there on the back patio. There's a palm tree swing. You can kind of feel the breeze of the ocean and so on. And we have this dinner, and it goes me on the table. Next to me is John. Next to John is my son. and they're having a really great conversation. I always appreciated how John tuned into my son. And then we go after dinner, go get on the elevator, and we're going up to our room. And my son says to me with the most sincere look in his eyes, he says, "Dad, how do I add value to John Maxwell?" And I remember thinking to myself, son, you don't. I was just like, dude, you're not going to be able to add value to John Maxwell. John Maxwell's, like this leadership legend. You're a 17-year-old kid. But he
Yeah.
was so sincere in his question that I knew I needed to give him an honest answer. And so we go up into our room and we're just thinking of some ideas we could do. And I said, what if you did this? What if you write him a note? What if you wrote him a handwritten note? And, he thought about it. The next day I would notice him pulling aside away from all of us. And I could see him writing, and he had his phone out so wouldn't misspell words. And as we traveled throughout the week, I saw him doing this over and over and over. Long story short, as I was watching this happen, I remember thinking to myself, what was he writing? What was he doing? Last night, John pulls us all or last night before John speaks, he's speaking in the room next to us for 6,000 people. My son walks
Yeah.
up to him and he gives him a letter. And it was a handwritten letter, like an 8x11, not a note, like a full-blown letter that he had written for John. And they had like this really sweet moment, but my son didn't just write one for John. He wrote one for Mark Cole, the CEO of the Maxwell organization, for all of the other kind of key leaders that were there, all these kind of key people. Jeff Stewart was one of them. Jeff Stewart owns Keller Williams franchises out in Nashville, North Carolina. So Jeff Stewart walks up to me and says, Justin, he said, if my sons ever write a letter like your son just wrote to me, he said, it'll be my proudest day as a father. And so John pulls us aside. He's about to go speak. He pulls us aside in this little group, and he says, my last piece of advice before you guys head home is to be unforgettable. He said, be unforgettable to your customers, be unforgettable to your clients, be unforgettable to your family, be unforgettable to the marketplace. Like it's the question is, how do you add more value? And that's how you become more unforgettable. Pulls out this note out of his suit jacket. He says, Isaac, you're unforgettable. And so the youngest kid in the room is the most unforgettable kid. Now, why was Isaac unforgettable? It's because he asked a simple question. And the question was, how can I add value? And that's how you become unforgettable. A quick end of that story, about 2 weeks later, Isaac gets a package in the mail, and it was from Jeff Stewart, the one that owns the Keller Williams brokerages in Asheville, North Carolina. He'd written Isaac a handwritten note and sent him a custom engraved Mont Blanc pen, which is a really beautiful, expensive pen. And he said that letter has been framed in all of those offices in Keller Williams, because anyone that walks in, they want them to see that letter kind of represents the principles and values that organization's built on, of this idea of adding value and serving other people. And so the way that you get in proximity with better people, higher level people, is you're asking yourself not what can I get, but it's how can I add value to them.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing storytelling,
Thank
man.
you.
Like I just want to say, in your book as well, it's just jam packed with some of the best stories I've heard. So you
Thank you.
you were a great storyteller.
I appreciate
Thank you
that.
for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell me about how you transformed your company from losing tens of thousands to making millions, because I think that's such an interesting part of your story.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Yeah. So that was 11 years ago. I came into a failing company. It was 8 years in a row of double-digit decline per year. It was just completely falling apart. And I came in originally as kind of a consultant, part of a consulting team, a transformation team. We basically ripped the company down to the floorboards and rebuild it. We had good intentions. The ideas led to the ideas, created a culture and a spirit of collective genius. And then we started to take this idea, this new business idea, out to the world, and man, just worked our worked our guts out, trying to enlist people in this vision. And that turned into had millions of customers, over 2.5 billion in sales over the next 11 years, and it turned into a really, really, really positive experience. And I share all that to say, it was like changing the engine of a 737 as you're at 30,000 feet, because you're taking an existing company, you're trying to like do turnarounds. So you're like tearing that one to the floorboards, but then creating a startup company at the same time. And so it's just kind of this huge transformation process. Super, super risky. The odds of success were probably zero. But the University of Pennsylvania did a study. It was a 22-year study, 350,000 participants. It was over. They were studying what made them successful, and they said that over time there was a thinking pattern that began to emerge, that they said was predictive of success. And what the thinking pattern was they were optimistic. They were optimists. And it said there was two characteristics they had. The first characteristic was that they had unrealistic expectations they would be successful. And man, when I think back, I'm like, dude, we had just had unrealistic expectations that this was going to work, that we were going to pull this thing off. And then the second characteristic was that they tried new things until they succeeded. They tried new things until they succeeded. And that's literally what we did. We just continued to try new things until we ultimately succeeded. And that's what led to the success.
How can someone develop that like relentless optimism in a situation where it looks like the odds really aren't in their favor?
Yeah, I mean, I think we go back to some of those things we talked about earlier, which is the read, listen, surround, apply. But I think it ultimately lands on habits. Building great habits. Habits and patterns will ultimately dictate your whole life. And the problem is most people have never intentionally designed their habits. So their whole life is kind of reacting to the distractions versus intentionally creating their life. And you want to be the kind of person that's always building net new habits that are helping you to be the person you're born to be. And then where your habits, the right things become the default setting. You're not hoping things go well. You actually have the right habits in place, and that helps you to build, the life you're looking to build.
100%. So going back to like going back to what you what you're saying earlier about your business. What was your why behind that?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I wanted to disrupt the industry that we were working in. I felt like the industry needed to be disrupted. I felt like it wasn't serving and fulfilling its promise to help people to build, durable income. And so I wanted to, that's kind of where a lot of that why was, is to be able to like change an industry for the better and help more people. My original kind of why when I was 25 was just I wanted to make my son proud of me. My son was, a year and a half years old at the time. I want to make my wife proud of me. I just wanted to live a significant life. And that's one of the things I try and do in the book is teach people the habits and the principles and the patterns, the frameworks and the formulas, the stuff that, so in other words, it's not just motivating people, it's actually like practically teaching them, here's what you need to do to change your life, to create, design, and live an unforgettable life.
100%. So you were talking about the habits and patterns and all that, but something you didn't mention that's really important is identity. And I know that's something you talk about a lot, both in your book and in your other content. So how has your identity changed over time?
Yeah. Well, so success is an identity process, and you'll never outperform the way you see yourself. So if you see yourself as a loser, you're not going to show up and play like a winner. If you see yourself like a winner, you're not going to roll over and quit like a loser. Like success is an identity process. And so for me, you're always looking to update your identity. Just like you might have an iPhone, the hardware is fine, but the software has to be updated all the time. It's the same concept, with updating your identity. You're always looking to update it and to improve it and to get better at it and to step into kind of the next version of your identity. And the identity is to be the person you were born to be. I tell people you're not who you are who you're born to be. So in other words, you are your potential. You're always stepping into and chasing this updated version of why were put on earth. And so when you look back at a picture when you
Yeah.
were when you were 7, that's who you were, but that's not who you were born to be. You were only 7. When you look at a picture, you're 16. Yes, that's who you were, but that's not who you were born to be. You're born to be who you are now. And so you're constantly looking at saying, who was I born to be? And then be, and then the word be. So the book's not called Become the One. You already are the one. The book's called Be. So in other words, it's a present state. Be the one today. Be the one that lives a life. Be the one that creates a story that future generations look up in their family lineage and they say it was him. It was her. She's the one. Be that one today.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. So So yeah, one question I wanted to ask you is that why do you think there isn't really more ambition in the developed world, and like not as many people want to like be the one for themselves and their family, um, as there were like 50 years ago or so.
Yeah, look, I don't, I don't know if the ambition level's gone down or not, but what I will say is, we have the highest anxiety rates we've ever had. We have the highest depression rates we've ever had. We have the highest suicide rates, specifically around young men, that we've ever had. And a lot of that is you don't realize who you really are. You know, if you realize that over the
Yeah.
last 12 generations, 4,094 people from all over the world have come together to create you, that they live for, those people lived for, bled for, cried for, died for you to have this moment, that every breath that you take is a gift, and that every single moment you have is a moment to be the one that you were born to be. Once you realize who you really are, you start stepping into an elevated version of yourself. You start saying, my life has value and purpose and meaning. Like, I'm here by purpose and on purpose and by design. My life is not random. And these decisions that you make not only affect you, but these decisions you make affect future generations of children that are yet unborn. You start realizing, like, man, I want to go live an intentional life and like make this thing count. And so that identity, I think, is one of the things that's hurting this next generation of kids, is they don't realize who they really are, what's really possible for them, and how much is really riding on them, creating and designing and living an unforgettable life.
Yeah, 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 totally. And I think that's something people just have to be like more like mindful of. Just the fact that their their whole lineage, like 4,000 or whatever people, like all died and worked for them so that they can have a good life. And it's just super motivating thinking about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. So, what's a pain that you enjoy having?
A pain?
Yeah, pain that you enjoy having.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I went to the gym this morning. I go to the gym, you know, basically every morning and have for years, but go to the gym this morning and we were doing legs. So anyone that knows, like, leg day is a painful day. And I just remember
Yeah.
thinking to myself, like, we were really, 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 really digging into the pain. Like, you're like leaning into it. Like, it hurts. It like legit hurts. Like, there's legit pain. Now, not injury pain, but like muscle fatigue, muscle soreness. Like, you're not sure if you can give it anymore. And you just dig deeper and then deeper and then deeper and just really go hard into it. And
Yeah.
the reason you do that is because when you lean into that pain actually helps you to, um, that pain actually helps you to tear down the muscles so that when they rebuild, they come back stronger. So in other words, you like, you tear it down to rebuild it more powerful than it's ever been before. And that is such a metaphor for life. You just kind of lean into the challenge. You lean into the obstacle. The obstacle is the way. So it's not, you don't run away from it. You lean into it. You don't run from the lion. You chase the lion, and that you go make things happen. And that's how you get stronger over time, is through the adversity.
100%. And something I heard a couple weeks ago that like really resonated with me was that in the gym, if you want to gain muscle, what you have to do is go to is fill. Like if you want to have like a good set, you got to go to failure. And that also applies to life too. Like if you want to grow, you got to fail and just keep failing. Yeah, so I'd totally agree with you there. I think the gym is just like it teaches you so many lessons that you can apply to pretty much every other area of your
Yeah,
life.
for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So let's say your 12-year-old self was looking at you right now. What would they be most surprised by?
Probably how old I look. Um, no, man, that's a great question. I got to run here just in a minute too, at the bottom of the hour. But I think my 12-year-old
Oh yeah, no worries.
self would say, I'd probably be like, man, you're more successful than we thought we were going to be, that kind of thing. Like, and I think they would look at my family and my wife and my kids, and they'd be like, this is crazy. I don't think I could have envisioned all this back when I was 12.
Yeah, yeah, and it's crazy. Like I feel like we never end up being the person who we thought we were going to be back then. So another question I really want to ask you is that so you didn't go to college and you didn't really you didn't really have any kind of formal business or like
Hmm.
financial education back then. How did you learn about like business and
I
finance?
just learned it in it. I just learned it by doing it. I remember sitting in meetings and they were talking about terms I'd never heard before, but I now know what those terms mean. And so I was humble enough to ask questions when I didn't know. I didn't always interrupt the meeting, but I would ask people. I'd pull people aside later and ask them. But but I just if I didn't know something, I just asked, and I just got in. I just was in the game. I just like was nose deep in it, and that helped me to just start to learn the lingo and start to learn and understand what was going on is just by getting in the game.
Yeah. What before you got into business, what misconceptions did you have of it? Like what did you think was true about business that ended up actually not being
Yeah.
true?
So I got to run here just in one sec, but what I
Yeah, no
what I would
worries.
say is that it was harder than I thought, and it took longer than I thought, but it's been more worth it than I thought. So like I think if I would have known how hard it was going to be, I would have probably just never started because I just didn't have the vision. But now that I've been through it, I realize it was worth the fight. It was worth the struggle, to get there. But again, it was harder than I thought and took longer than I thought.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think the way business is portrayed online just makes it seem like a lot easier than it actually is, and like only shows the good side of rather than the stuff that isn't really too sexy. Anyways, you said you got to run now.
Yeah, yeah, I got to jump here.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Justin. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all your wisdom. And yeah, if you enjoyed this podcast, go check out his book. It's called Be the One. I believe you can find it on
Yeah,
Amazon and your website as
yeah,
well.
just wherever your favorite books are sold, as you can get it there for sure.
Hell yeah, and go check him out on Instagram. It's I am Justin Prince. He's got a ton of extremely valuable content. Justin, I'll see you later. Thanks again for coming
Thanks,
on.
brother. Great to meet you. Keep up the good work.
Appreciate it. You too.